What's up?
Hey, Robert, how's it going?
I'm good, brother. How are you?
Good, good.
I figured going back to Cali was probably appropriate for this.
Oh, yeah?
Um, how's your day?
Good. Warming up. Allergies are starting to reside, so that's good.
Yeah, I have bad allergies, asthmatic, the whole bit. Um, so first, uh, give us your name. Tell us who you are, what you do, where you at.
I'm Jared Rusten, and my business is J. Rusten Furniture Studio here in Stockton, California.
Now,
Formerly,
where's that?
so Stockton is like 90 minutes east of San Francisco.
Okay,
So it's like in the Central Valley, south of Sacramento.
okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, I it's been about 19 years since I've been kind of focused and dedicated to being a full-time furniture maker. And I feel like in the last few years, I finally got it figured out a little bit. So
Right.
yeah, things have been rolling a lot better than in the past. So.
All right, cool, cool. All right, so I always start with a few questions.
Yeah.
And here we go. Do you have an overused phrase or word?
Well, I'm sure like is a word that I would prefer not to use as much as I do. And the other thing I'm notorious for saying all the time, and my wife Emily teases me about it constantly, is the problem is. And actually, I think that relates to being a woodworker, actually, because I think woodworker brain is trained to identify potential problems that are going to arise in the course of a project. And so you're kind of looking at what obstacles you might face. Okay, well, I can't put this together until I do this, or else I won't be able to reach it, or, I need to do this finishing step first or whatever. So yeah, I feel like over time I've been sort of trained to just look at the problems. And so anytime Emily's like, oh, well, shouldn't we do this? This would be a cool idea. I'm like, okay. The problem is, and she's like, come on, let's focus on the positive first, and then we can identify challenges. But yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I think I kind of do that as well, because you want to solve all those before they arrive.
yeah, you don't want to waste, and you also don't want to waste time on, things you could do if you know that it's not worth pursuing that path. So.
Right. Okay. What is your least favorite thing to do?
Like logistics, delivery stuff. Like that's the most stressful, because you've devoted all this time and energy to the piece, and now you have this one last variable, getting it from your shop or your studio into the client's home. And so that's always my least favorite aspect. And it actually, that has informed what I do, or what I've chosen to do, because like I have some good friends who have good businesses where, they want to build, 20 tables a month for $1,000, and get them out the door. But that's like 20 customers a month. And that's 20 pieces that you then have to, worry about, versus, making one $10,000 or $20,000 table per month, or, just having that one client or that one customer and that one very stressful delivery that you have to deal with. So, yeah, those dislikes have definitely informed how I want my business to be structured.
Yeah, we talk about being turned into delivery people.
Yeah.
Because that's what you become. a delivery person for
Well,
the delivery.
yeah, and friends that I have that make products, you know, you might have a great idea for a small product, you know. Let's say it's a bowl or a stand or some other desktop piece. And if they're choosing to do all the order fulfillment themselves, pretty soon half of their day or more is spent in, you know, devoting a huge part of the studio to boxes and you know, it's like they're getting shipments from Uline constantly to like just package and ship out and have fancy order fulfillment software and stuff like that. So
Okay. What is your most favorite thing to do? Is that moonshine or water?
Moonshine might treat me better, but this is just water for now. We'll see how the conversation goes. So to be honest, I really like sanding. I really like the process of sanding because it's kind of like sweeping a dirty floor.
So give me 1 second.
Yeah.
These questions are not necessarily for work. They're just in life.
Same answer. Same answer. No, I'm just kidding. Well, to be honest, okay, so favorite thing to do in life is to, I don't know what a better term for it is, but like, you know, like rock climbers or, you know, other athletes, they talk about getting into like the flow state, or musicians, you know, they're in the flow. Like,
in the zone.
Yeah, they're in the zone where no distractions, they're just relying on everything that they have and they're just going for it. And that is the thing that I'm like addicted to. Like that's what I crave. So, you know, it aggravates my wife sometimes if we're on vacation. Like we were in Hawaii a couple years ago, and I just got so stir crazy. I like drove to the Ace Hardware, and I bought steel wool and some paste wax. And the Airbnb that we were staying in, I was just like, hey, I'm gonna spend like a couple hours just like polishing all the furniture in this Airbnb because I just need, like, you know, I can sit on the beach and I can, you know, sit in the hammock for only so long before I crave that zone, you know, just like put my headphones on, give me a couple hours, let me listen to a podcast or two, and let me just do my thing. And that goes back to the sanding thing where it's taking a thing and watching it transform, you know, whether it's mowing the lawn or sweeping the floor, like dusty floor, and then you can see the floor. With the wood grain, it's like you're taking kind of obscure, hard to really see wood grain, and when you're sanding it or if you're polishing it, now you can see it. Now it emerges. Like that's the thing that I think is my favorite thing to do. Okay.
All right. What is the one thing you would change about your spouse or significant other?
Not a thing. I think she's watching here.
Oh yeah, she is. What makes? We're gonna move to the next question.
Okay.
Did you want to expound?
No.
What makes you tick?
I think just the need to create, just the need to like create something. Just yeah, the need to take like individual component parts and put them in a thing that's like useful and pretty, whatever it is.
Right. What irks you the most?
Probably getting distracted or getting jostled out of that zone. When I'm in the zone and there's things that I have to attend to, whether it's, you know, a meeting or some other like part of life that is just, and you know, that you just have to deal with. It's like there are crude analogies I could make, but the idea is like, you know, being in the zone and you know, like feeling it, like and then getting disrupted from that and getting out of that. That's just like, that's a feeling that's like really, it really hurts.
Yeah, someone killing your vibe.
Yeah.
All right. What sound makes you most happiest?
My dog makes a lot of like sounds that I like. Let's see, where is he? Let's see. I think you can see him. Oh, you can kind of see him right there. There he is. So that's Cash.
All right.
So,
how long have you had him?
So I think about 4 years now. We got him on Valentine's Day from the shelter. 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay.
So yeah, he makes a lot of like, you know, we know his gotta pee sounds. We know his like puppy dog dream sounds, or he makes.
So he's trained you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
What sound bothers you?
I know I have like a huge list. I mean, a piece of metal hitting a sharp blade is a very bad sound.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. We don't have it too much here in Stockton, but in San Francisco, like just the BART sound, the sound of the Bay Area Rapid Transit, like the San Francisco subway.
Okay.
Just, it's like constant, like kind of whining sound, just send me into like a rage. So thankfully I'm away from that.
All right. What's your favorite cuss word?
Well, I really like it when people use the word shit to describe things that like obviously aren't shit, you know? Like, for example, like let's say, I'm trying to think of something that's like not super offensive, but like let's say like somebody left a whole bunch of like religious artifacts, like really important religious artifacts, like laying around all over the place, and then somebody else said, "What's all this shit?" For some reason, like using the word shit to describe things that are like the opposite of it, just cracks me up. But that's pretty, I don't know, that's pretty juvenile.
That's, you know, it's a feeling.
What's your favorite curse word?
I try not to.
You're not gonna say it?
No, I try not to cuss.
Oh.
Yeah.
What's up with this? What's up with this? Like entrapment, like asking your interview subjects, like, I don't cuss. I personally never cuss.
Well, no. The thing is, I was coming up with questions that I thought would be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I never claimed to be an interesting guy.
Well, you don't curse, so that's interesting. I mean, there's a story there probably.
Right, exactly, because it's not the norm. Okay, let me tell you why. Back a while ago, I dated a girl, and we got into an argument, and we cussed each other out.
Mm-hmm.
We decided to minus the bad words, and then the arguments are not as violent.
So did you come up with like weird substitute curse words? Like, you're such a spatula, you know? Like...
No substitutes.
Okay. Well, that sounds like good policy.
Try. What profession other than your own would you like to try?
Well, there was a lot of professions, like different creative professions that I was drawn to early on, you know, like architecture, okay? Or even like playing music or directing film or
Do,
things
do you
like.
do you play an instrument?
I did. Like I played in bands in high school and early college years, and I still poorly play like drums and guitar and just stuff we have around here. And a friend and I started like making guitars a couple years ago. It's just kind of like a side project, which hopefully we get to like start up again. But
What music do you like?
Well, when we were in high school, me and my buddies were just like crazy blues fans. Like we could not get enough of like John Lee Hooker and Muddy Waters and Junior Wells and Lightning Hopkins, just like all those, 1940s, 1950s, 1960s blues guys. But we're also into like the 60s kind of like mod scene, like the Vespa garage rock, like the 60s garage rock scene. So we kind of were doing like the same thing that the British invasion bands did, like the Beatles and the Yardbirds and the Stones, like covering early American blues, blues folks, but we were just doing it in the mid 90s. So blues, garage rock, like 60s stuff, and then indie rock, just like college rock kind of stuff. Like,
Okay.
And now I'm getting back into the stuff that would be on like easy listening radio, like in the car as a kid. That, like, for example, like Steely Dan. Like I'm on like a crazy Steely Dan kick right now. And
Steely Dan's nice.
I mean, like, but 10, 20 years ago, that would have been to me like the epitome of just like gross. Like I don't want to hear this. But now I'm like, but now I'm like tripping out on just listening to like every album through and just like really listening to the instrumentation. And so I'm going back through all that like good 70s stuff. But
all right, cool. So the last question is, what would you want on your tombstone? What would you want it to say?
I think I'd wanted to say something about how this dude just like wore himself out, like doing his thing. Like I think
Stay
like,
in the zone.
Well, yeah, like I think that like the greatest, like not the greatest tragedy, but like it's really tragic to kind of waste opportunity, waste privilege, waste waste access, waste time. And so, like my woodworking heroes like James Krenoff and George Nakashima and Sam Maloof and Wendell Castle. I mean, all those dudes just worked until they died, like people talk about retirement. I'm like,
literally,
what's that? Like,
yep.
that's not a thing that occurs to me. So
those are people who love their work.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying harder these days to like separate ego from enjoying life and that kind of stuff. And so I'm like, my ambitions have less to do with any sort of like notoriety or fame or whether people in New York know who I am or whatever. But I think that, okay, so I think like woodworking is like a pretty indulgent activity, right? Like if you get to do woodworking for a living, you're pretty lucky. Like it's pretty, I don't want to say, well, it's pretty selfish, right?
Right.
So I feel like if you're woodworking and you're not working at a nonprofit or you're not doing something that is going to benefit the world, then at least you could try to benefit your own community, or at least you could try to give back in terms of offering something original. Like if you as a woodworker could come up with like a new technique or a new joint or a new way to do something or a new tool that would make things easier for everybody, I think that's like important. So I aspire to you know, and this again, this goes back to the ego a little bit, but like, you know, if somebody says, okay, well, that chair, that looks like Malufian, you know, or that case is Crenovian. If I ever was able to get to a point where somebody could say, well, that is Rustinian, or that's Rustin-esque, I feel like that's about as much as I could hope to aspire to like, you know, you've got like the vocabulary of design, and if you could add a word to that vocabulary, like, oh, that, you know, that's this new thing. And so it's like, I would never fault somebody who wants to just like reproduce antiques. If that's their jam, great, you know, but it's kind of the difference between being like a cover band and like writing original music, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
but I completely listen. What you're saying is spot on, but original music is hard. When we think of that, people who did that and were successful, we think of greats. Well, not everybody can be great.
Well, there are plenty of people that added to like the lexicon of music that were not good musicians. Like, for example, like the Ramones. Okay, so take the Ramones. Like they had a thing that they were shooting for, right? Now, they maybe missed the mark, but where they ended up was a new primal.
Right, they tried like hell. Right, I'm with you.
So, but you're right, it is hard. It's very hard. But I think that that's like a pursuit, like originality is a pursuit that's worth going for.
Yes, it's a road worth traveling.
I mean, I've embraced this stuff that is hard. You know, it's like, okay, if I want to prove to myself that I'm good at this thing, give me the hardest thing that there is to do, you know? Right. Like try to make a living being a woodworker.
Yeah, I'm with you. Okay, so now this is where we start. So what we're going to start, what I'd like you to start is the moment you left high school, and tell us about your journey and how you got to where you are now.
Okay. So as I said, like in high school, you know, me and my friends were playing in bands. We were always doing creative stuff. You know, we were like little skateboarder kids, you know, hanging out in the, you know, skate shop and building skate ramps. So I had
exposure. Now, where'd you grow up?
I grew up in San Jose, okay. California. So that's like about an hour south of San Francisco. It's a big city, a big suburban sprawl. And that's where a lot of the early, you know, Apple and HP and Yahoo and eBay, that's where a lot of like the early tech stuff. So, you know, a lot of our friends' dads were in the tech industry, and it was boring. It was because it was this big suburb. It was boring, and we had to find stuff to do. And so usually it was like creative. So, you know, I had a lot more fun. Like I knew I had Saturday and maybe part of Sunday where we could try to build a skate ramp as fast as we could, you know? And even if we didn't get a chance to skate on it, at least like that activity would be the thing that was exciting. So, but graduating from high school, I figured, well, I want to do something creative, but I'm going to need a degree. You know, I'm going to need some sort of degree to fall back on. So worst case scenario, if whatever I try to do doesn't work out, I could at least get a teaching job, or I could like get a job, you know, doing CAD drawings for a company or whatever. And when I graduated, and you know, in my young adulthood was like right during the .com boom in the Bay.
When you graduated from high school to college?
Well, when I graduated from high school, I graduated from high school in '94. Played in bands, messed around, you know, just kind of like had odd jobs. But when it was like time to go to school and buckle down, the Bay Area was like so crazy expensive because it was the, you know, like the bubble, the first bubble. So Arizona at the time was like super cheap, and I had a bunch of friends down there, and I figured, okay, I'll go to ASU. I'll get a design degree to fall back on, and then we'll see where it goes. I had kind of a glimmer of wanting to be a woodworker, but I still didn't know what that meant exactly. So go to Arizona, work in some cabinet shops, work some other like odd jobs, start doing my like, track to do this 5-year degree program. And after one semester, I was just like, I can't do it. Like, I can't do this thing just to have something to fall back on. I can't put in all this time and effort into this thing just in case. Like, just
plan B. Right.
Yeah. I'm like, no, like the more I spent that year, like doing research and looking at different schools that were like specific to just woodworking, like College of the Redwoods, or, there's some schools in San Diego, some schools in Oregon, CCA in San Francisco. I decided, okay, I just want to learn how to use these tools because I already have kind of some like designs. I already have kind of an aesthetic that I'm developing, but I want to know how to use a router, safely. I want to, I do want some hand tool education. So from Arizona, I started just like researching all the different schools like on the West Coast. And I eventually found Cerritos College, which is just a small community college on the eastern side of LA. But I visited their campus one Sunday. I didn't really expect anybody to be there, but I show up on a Sunday and it's just packed with people. And wow. I think their space at the time, or maybe now, it's something like 60,000 square feet of space, like a huge machine room, a huge bench room, a huge like cabinetry room, a hand tool room. And I was like, this is where I have to be. Like, this is it. And the other thing was, because it was a community college at the time, it was like $11 a unit. So it could not be cheaper in terms of education. Because I was looking at art schools that were, $8-10 grand a semester.
Right.
So moved to LA, and I just started sticking my nose all over the place, like driving to like tool stores in Long Beach. Okay, this is a cool tool store because they have Japanese tools, and start bugging the owner. Okay, who around here, are the like really good woodworkers? And this is like, I mean, at that time, like no woodworkers had websites. This is like 2001.
Yeah.
So this is
on pavement.
No YouTube, no. I mean, there was kind of an internet, but it was pretty sparse in terms of like education compared to how it is now. So I found there was a guild, the Woodworking Guild of Southern California, and the story that I posted with Harold Green, me and Harold Green and Sam Maloof, that photo. So Harold Green, for at least a number of years, was the president and I think the founder of the Woodworkers Guild of Southern California. So I met these guys, and these are all master craftsmen spread all out over LA. Pasadena, Hawthorne, Fullerton, San Pedro, and I wasn't a professional woodworker yet. I had only made a couple of pieces, but I somehow like wormed my way in with like an associate membership or something. So I got to go to the guild meetings, and I got to learn from a lot of these like incredible people.
And this is why you were young.
I was like 24 or 25. Yeah.
What were they like?
What were the people like?
Yeah.
Well, they were like crotchety old woodworkers like we are now. I mean, they were like, it was a wide spectrum, There are some like, great female makers, Cindy Vargas and Meredith Sattler, and William Stranger, Steve Levinson. I mean, there was a really wide spectrum. Like this guy, Gary Clark, down in Huntington Beach. Like, you name a celebrity, and he built a piece for them. I mean, he was like tied in with like the, you know, interior designers to the stars. But the thing is, you go into his shop and it's like humble. It's probably like 600 square feet or something, and just like chaotic. And he just seemed like a crazy, like burnt out surfer dude, but like the work he did was like immaculate. So I was taking classes at Cerritos, and then at the same time I was like apprenticing basically for these different makers. So and these a lot of these shops were just one-man operations where they couldn't afford a full-time employee, but you know, they'd have me come for like 2 days a week, and I would just do sanding or whatever they needed, or I would just like go down a cabinetry cut list and just like be ripping all day. Excuse me. And so that was like a great education. I mean,
Yeah.
I would like drive all the way down to San Pedro and, you know, work in this guy's shop that restores like Woody cars. So he'd give me a piece. Now, granted, I didn't last very long in this shop, but you know, because he'd give me this really complicated piece out of, you know, 12 or 16 quarter maple, and he's like, remake this piece and then make the mirror image of it, and this is a piece that goes on, you know, this 1940 whatever Plymouth Woody. But then I'd go to like Pasadena and do like a bunch of high-end stuff, or you know, drive to you know, Torrance, or I was just like driving all over the place. And then after doing that for like a year, I kind of settled down just with one guy, William Stranger, in Pasadena. And so I'd work for him 2-3 days a week. And he was really cool because he'd let me see like all of the business.
Okay, one second.
Yeah.
Right? Let's back up a little bit. For this year, when you were driving these long distances, what's the longest you've driven to help someone?
Well, I mean, in LA traffic, am I right? You know, I mean, like it would, here's what would suck. If we were like installing way up in like Beverly Hills or something, and we'd you know, get done with our install at like 5, but then we'd have to drive all the way down the 405 in rush hour traffic back to Culver City to drop off the tools and everything. And then I get in my car and I drive from Culver City all the way across to Whittier, where I was living. So
okay, so what? I don't know what that means.
That would be
How far
like
was
4
that?
hours. You know, that would be like from the time that we stopped work, you know, at the job site, you know, all the way down to Culver City, unload, then all the way over, you know, 2 hours to
Wow.
Whittier in rush hour. Yeah, so it was that's, you know, that's what you call like paying dues, you know.
It is.
And you know, and I saw the struggles. Like one of the shops I was working for, we were doing all these teak chaise lounge chairs, like a dozen of them, and they were already kind of late to this client. And this job was crazy. Like, you know, obviously teak is always crazy expensive, and the owner of the shop only had enough. I mean, he had barely enough. And so,
No room for error.
well, we got to the point where some of the parts of these chaise lounges, we were gluing up like 10 little strips to make one stretcher, you know, to go underneath. It wouldn't be seen, but we were like gluing together like almost like laminations, just because there was no buying more teak. And they had to be delivered this certain day. And it was, you know, the boss and like one helper and myself, and it gets to be like 6 p.m. We're nowhere near done. I mean, we're still sanding, we're still oiling. These got to be delivered the next day. Okay, we stay a little later. Now it's like 8 p.m. Now it's like 10 p.m. Now it's midnight, and we're still nowhere near done. And so me and Steve, the guy that I was working with, we tell the owner, we're like, okay, dude, what do you want here? Because like, you want us to stay all night? And he's like, yeah, if you could. We said, okay, well, we're getting like $1 raise starting right now at midnight. So the three of us just like worked our ass off for, just all night. We just like cranked it all night, delivered these things at like 10 a.m., to this like super fancy, insane producer's house. I actually got in trouble because I was like taking some photos and I wasn't supposed to be. And I got.
Since you were there, right?
Yeah, I got in trouble because it was amazing. It was like a John Lautner house, like up on the hill. Anyway, yeah, we delivered these things with no time to spare. And so early on, I should have sort of known better, having witnessed the challenges that some of these makers, because there were times when guys that I worked for, they were like, well, I can't pay you this week, but when we deliver this project, then you get paid. And thankfully I was in a position then that I could work with that. But so yeah, I got to see, I got so many stories from that time period that informed a lot. One of my favorite stories was, Carl Stammerjohn, who was one of the guild members and one of my teachers at Cerritos. He is the head of the Cerritos woodworking department now, but he was like an ex like satellite engineer. He worked for Hughes Aircraft. So his work was just so precise, like just so like you couldn't find anything wrong with any of his work. It was amazing. And he had this dresser that he had built that he needed to deliver, like a super fancy dresser, probably like a $4,000 or $5,000 cherry dresser with like inlays, just gorgeous piece of work. And he hits me up because he just needs help with the delivery. So we go over to this apartment complex where the address was. And it was not the location where you'd expect to deliver a super high-end fancy cherry dresser. It was like, it was, these apartments were kind of like the projects, like they were rough. And we're wheeling, this dresser down this cracked sidewalk to this apartment. And it's just like, just like nasty stucco, a 30-year-old air conditioner that's got just like stains down the wall, like crazy hard security gate. And we knock on the door and the client invites us in, and it's this crazy old guy. He's like probably in his 80s or something. Stained khakis, stained t-shirt, doesn't look like he's changed. The place just like smells like horrible. It's dark. It's like all the blind, like you can't hardly see in there. It's just carpet that's like 40 years old. And he tells us he wants the dresser delivered up in the, in the master bedroom upstairs. So, we very carefully, gingerly haul this dresser up the stairs, and we get to this room and we place the dresser. There's nothing in the room except for a bare mattress. And as we turn around, the entire wall behind us is just covered with porn, like old, nasty, faded, like centerfolds, and like just an entire wall full of pornography, like old 70s and 80s, stapled on.
Hustler,
yeah,
Playboy.
Yeah. And I look at Carl, and I look at this dresser. This dresser could have been in the Smithsonian. This dresser was just like a dovetailed drawer, no shortcuts, the entire internal frame structure. Just like impeccable. And you look at where it's being delivered to, and it's like, well, the guy's money was green. And I was like, Carl, how did this guy find you? He's like, the yellow pages. The guy just called up on a yellow page ad, said, I need a new dresser. And, you know, Carl's talking to him on the phone like, okay, well, I make a certain kind, you know, I make this kind of high-end kind of furniture. You know, the guy's like, no problem, sounds good, whatever you want, you know. So that kind of taught me early on that, you know, you don't really get to choose whether your piece is in like a perfect Dwell magazine, you know, beachfront estate or somewhere else, you know.
Right.
But so anyway, I you know, I worked for a couple of years for these guys, and specifically William. He became like kind of the one guy, and we did a lot of interesting projects. We actually we did an install of a bunch of really cool recycled dug fir cabinetry on Catalina Island. So we got to like ferry all this stuff over to Catalina and crash there, and swim in the morning and install this stuff.
That's pretty cool.
And like I was saying, he was really generous in that he let me witness the whole process. So, you know, I got to listen in on the client interaction. I got to ask him about the numbers, and he would tell me. And it got to the point where there was, you know, a project or two where William bought the lumber, but I pretty much did everything else on the project. And so I knew, okay, I'm tracking my time, like, okay, it's taking me this many hours. I'm charging this, you know, shop rent is this. And that sort of made me like naive enough to think, okay, I can do this myself. Like, I can do this, you know. It was like, okay, if William can do it and these other folks can do it, and Sam Malouf and George Nakashima did it, like, okay, I can do it too. And so the dot-com bubble burst in 2002, 2003, and then it suddenly was like cheap enough to move back to the Bay Area. So I moved back to San Jose, did some odd jobs for a little while, and then I was working for this guy, and he knew a guy who wanted a entertainment center, and said, oh, this guy could build you an entertainment center. Can you build me an entertainment center? Oh, sure, yeah, I can build you an entertainment center. Like, writes me a deposit check for $1,500. I take that $1,500, you know, use part of it to buy the material, and I use like $500 to put a deposit on my first actual rented workshop. So that was the thing that like kicked, you know, got me going. So super scary. I made nothing. I probably made like $5 an hour on this. Like at the time, you know, and you can interrupt me. Like if you want to cut me off, feel free.
Let me tell you, this is why I want to do this. I just want to absorb it all.
Well, so, and this guy was a stickler. This client was like a project manager on big construction projects. So he's used to like ordering subs around, you know, he's like a hard ass. And I was almost all wrapped up with this thing. I mean, it was like an entire, you know, 13-foot long, you know, 8-foot tall, built in with a giant frame that was attached with like magnets. So it was like a big projection TV, and, you know, speaker grill cloth, you know, over the, you know, in the door panels for the speakers, and, you know, all in solid cherry. And I'm just finishing up the crown molding, okay, because he wanted sort of this traditional style. And, you know, you're buying solid cherry crown molding, it's like, whatever, like $80 a stick or $100 a stick. And of course, the main piece in front, I miscut it by an inch. I burned an inch.
Too short.
I burned an inch on my tape measure, cut it too short. But I'm crafty, you know, I'm crafty. So I find that offcut, and I, you know, use some glue, and I, you know, add that little 1 inch back on, and, you know, I kind of feather in the finish, you know, okay, it's fine. It's way up there, you know, get it nailed in. And of course, like, client comes in, looks around, first thing he sees is like, I see it, dude. Good try, but do it again. So there's me going down to put, you know, an $80 piece of cherry crown molding on a credit card, because by then there was like no money left, you know. But so that job, you know, I finished that job, didn't make any money. But then his next door neighbor says, oh, I want an entertainment center too. And I'm like, okay, I can do that. And then
now you know how to charge.
Well, I at least like know more about what I'm doing. And thankfully this other one was a bit better. But I'm still like calling, you know, I'm calling William up in Pasadena, like, okay, so I'm gonna order like these Blum hinges, and you know, what do I do here, and what do I do here? And so he was still giving me like tech support, basically. So from there, I get a job to build a staircase for this artist lady way up in the hills in like the Santa Cruz Mountains. And this woman wants this crazy elliptical staircase. And she had a bunch of stair companies come, and they didn't want to touch it. They're like it's too weird. It's an elliptical curve, okay? And also, she wanted storage for all of her canvases underneath the staircase. And I was like, yeah, I could do it, no problem. And I give her a price. She calls me back the next day. She's like, okay, you quoted me this price, but are you sure you can do this? Like, are you sure you could pull this off? I'm like, yeah, no problem. And it was like super tricky because, you know, it involved a bunch of, you know, 2-inch by 2-inch walnut pieces that, you know, had to be whatever, like 8 or 10 feet long. And if you know that, like, if you're trying to rip, you know, thick solid walnut down, and you're trying to get straight pieces that are 2-inch by 2-inch, if you need 20, you better rip 30, because,
yes,
you know, most of them are going to be all over the place.
They're going to dance.
And then, you know, and again, this is like pre-YouTube, pre-internet. This is like getting info from books and just like asking all the old guys I know, like, okay, I'm going to glue on site this elliptical curved handrail. Okay. I'm going to glue it on site of 7 laminations, and with nasty plastic resin glue, you know, however many feet long, 12 feet long or something. And man, that was probably the scariest, sketchiest glue up, because I was doing it by myself at night, all these pieces sliding around, nasty glue, not enough clamps, of course, never enough clamps, but somehow I pull it off. And so it's this like elliptical curved handrail out of solid walnut. Well, not solid, but like 7, you know, 1/4-inch pieces, or maybe 3/8 pieces laminated together. Shape it, get it all done. Here's your staircase. The woman literally crying tears. And she hands me a check for like a bonus. Like, it was like 30% of what she had, you know, already paid me. I charged her like $3,500, I think, and she gave me like another $500, another $700, or no, maybe it was more. Maybe it was like $1,000. But anyway, she says, I wasn't going to tell you this. She's crying. She's like, it's so beautiful. I had other stair companies in here, and their quotes were like $18,000.
I was going to ask you that.
And when you told me you're going to do it for $3,500, I didn't think you were going to be able to do it. And
that's why she called it Esther.
Not only did you do it, but you did it in this like beautiful artistic way. You know, of course, like I use like curly maple, and I pegged everything, and she became a good client because she was the CFO for this big construction company. So then she hired me to do these lobby interiors for this big building. And that's,
there you go.
And that's when, because
there you go.
I wasn't charging her directly
Exactly.
anymore. I was charging the company. And she told me, she's like, hey, don't underbid this, you know, make this worth your while. And then she commissioned me.
Those are the friends we need.
Right. So it was a direct line from this cruddy cabinetry job, you know, this entertainment center, to another kind of cruddy entertainment center, to then this interesting staircase, which I never want to make another staircase again, but man, I learned a lot. And then that sort of launched me into other work that was more part of my aesthetic and what I wanted to build.
Okay, so at what point along this did you say, okay, I can do this?
I thought, I mean, I naively thought that I was going to be able to do it.
From the start.
From the start. It wasn't until, you know, the challenges later that it's like, oh, this might not be sustainable. Like, I might just be trying to support a ridiculous hobby, you know?
So can you give an example of what those challenges were? Is there anything that sticks out?
Well, I'll say, like, in terms of the trajectory, I think that I got, like, lucky. I think that my expectations were maybe skewed a little bit. It's kind of like, I'll compare it to the band again. So in high school, you know, we had this band that was pretty well known within a couple high schools, right? And, you know, at high school, you kind of have this captive audience, okay? It's really easy to get the flyers out. It's really easy to tell people about the show. And these high school kids have nothing better to do anyway. So we'd have a show at like a little, you know, the basement of a library or like a Knights of Columbus Hall, and we'd get 100 kids show up, like no problem, right? Then college years, it's like there's no more of this, you know, community. And so we were so spoiled that now trying to get people to come to shows when they've got better things to do, or, you know, it's like you're lucky if you get 16 people to show up. And I think in the same way, like, I remember I was 25, I was in LA, and I said, by the time I'm 30, I want to have my own workshop and I want to be producing my own designs, okay? But by like 27, 28, not only did I have my own shop and was producing my own designs, but I had like a show at Harvard. I had a show at Design Within Reach. I showed at the International Contemporary Furniture Fair in New York with the Furniture Society. Like, I got a bunch of press in, like, you know, magazines and newspapers and stuff. And I was like, I thought, oh, right. Like, you know, that's the way it should be. Like, of course, like, I just got like lucky, you know, or it was a, you know, good fortune. Well, okay. So this is the thing that I always like remind myself, like, success, however you define it, is a product of like three things. Okay. It's like your own innate ability that you're born with. Okay. Your own brain and talent, whatever. Then there's luck, just like meeting the right person at the right time. And the third thing is hard work. Well, you can only control one of those things. Okay. Like, you're born with what you're born with. And obviously you can take good care of yourself, whatever, try to educate yourself. And you can also try to put yourself in situations where you're going to meet those right people. But generally, you know, you just do the work. So, it wasn't until the economy tanked in like 2007, 2008, when all these, you know, emails drying up, calls drying up, that woman that I did the staircase for, so she actually commissioned me along with the wife of the CEO of this big construction company to build this like gorgeous $10,000 executive desk for the CEO. It was going to be a surprise for his birthday, right? Well, 2007 hits 2000, and this company has to start laying off its workers. There's no way that the boss is going to get a $10,000, executive desk anymore. So I had gotten a deposit for that project, and the client said, well, keep it, but we're not going forward with the project anymore. And I mean, I was at the point where I was like, okay, do I sell everything and just like get a job at the supermarket, or?
Okay, wait, whoa. So it was that bad. You had no work, no.
I mean, yeah, it was. So I diverted a little bit during that time. So like in 2006, my architect friend was building this bar in New York. And I had been to New York for ICFF and I kind of fell in love with it. I was like, the energy.
It's easy to do.
Yeah, everything was exciting. And he was building this bar in Williamsburg. And it was just like hipster capital and just so much cool stuff happening. And he just graduated from Harvard. This is going to be his first built project. And we were working for this like literal like Irish gangster dude, like this crazy Irish gangster that owned all this property just to launder all of his like crazy illegal gambling money or whatever. So he didn't really care about the design of the bars. He didn't really even care if the bars made that much money, at least at the time. But I don't know, I'll try to make it short. So I spent a year building this bar. It was awesome. Took years off my life. But it was.
What's the name of the bar?
What's that?
What's the name of it?
The name of the bar is Macri Park. And so it's in Williamsburg, right on Union. It's like 462 Union between Metropolitan. And it's like, there's a little triangular park there where the BQE and Union and Metropolitan all intersect. And
yep.
So the bar was named after that little triangular park. And it was just...
Whoa. We have 1 minute and 27 seconds left.
Okay.
So we're going to cut off. We're going to get back on.
Okay.
All right?
All right. See you in a sec.
All right. See you all in a moment.
Hey.
Hello. Welcome back.
Thanks. I feel like just to give context to the New York experience.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that more, but go ahead.
So the reason why this whole New York adventure appealed to me, besides just loving New York, was because I had delivered a bunch of fancy pieces of furniture to clients, to wealthy clients. And like, for example, I built this crazy expensive chair, for me at the time, at least, $6,000 chair. And this interior designer had commissioned it for her client. I drive up to Napa and I, go to this like huge estate and nobody's like really expecting me. This like regal guy comes out. He's the founder of like, a well-known fashion company. And he's like, who are you? And I'm delivering the chair. He's like, oh, chair. Okay, whatever. Just put it in the room. He's like this really handsome Italian older man in like a jumpsuit. I go into this like crazy gigantic room. Okay. Grand piano, just slab furniture. I mean, just decorating this one room had to have been like $500,000 easy. And I'm putting my chair over next to the grand piano. And this is a vacation home. Okay. And I'm like, nobody's ever going to play that piano. Nobody's ever going to sit in this chair. And nobody's ever going to like even look at it and love it and sort of like cherish it, Like, And so it made me feel even more like indulgent than normal about this job, about this career. It's like, oh, I'm just building pieces for wealthy people that don't even have a connection to the object, because it was an interior designer that spec'd it, right?
Right.
So that's when I was like, okay, well, what's my next move? Like, what might be more satisfying? Okay, well, maybe designing and building a public space. Okay, so if I can help design and execute a public space that everybody can enjoy and come in, maybe that would be satisfying. Maybe that would be fun. And so that's what prompted the trip to New York. And also it was kind of like originally this crazy gangster dude was like paying pretty well, envelopes of cash every week, like quite a bit of money. Then I'm trying to make this short, but
take your time.
Things went south with him. I think, unless that guy could totally have you under his thumb, then pretty much any business relationship with him is going to go south before long. And granted, we were taking quite a while, and we were spending quite a bit of money on this project. I mean, I love my architect friend dearly, but because this was like his first project and he knew it was like a lot of visibility, we threw everything at it, like a cork ceiling. We covered the ceiling with cork, and then down from the cork, there's like this articulated slatted ceiling. Like, there's just too much. There's too much to explain going on in this space. And we did a lot of it ourselves, which is a tiny crew. I mean, we both went into debt to get the job finished. The owner stopped paying us. He was like, I'm not spending any more money on this. But we already had so much invested. We both were like putting materials on our own credit card just to get the job done. Job got done, got it photographed. My architect friend used that along with a couple other projects, won a Young Architect Award in New York.
Wow.
Now he's teaching at Harvard, and he's done a bunch of other like really amazing projects. And like 6-8 months after we finished, the dude just changed. He just changed most of it. Like, put in TVs. We worked with this German photographer, this like well-known German photographer, to create these like really interesting abstract wall panels, and he just like put other wallpaper over it. Yeah, he's like, I don't need fancy design to sell whiskey. So the bar is still there, but I think there's probably only a few little elements that still remain. But it was an experience. So I was still doing commissions for clients in California at the time.
Where did you live in Brooklyn?
In Williamsburg. I lived on South First Street, between Wythe and Berry. And then my workshop.
What year was this?
This is 2006.
Okay.
2006 to 2007. So I got to meet some of my, current kind of Instagram buddies, like Erickson Aesthetics. And I know Eric Irvin, woodworker, was there in Brooklyn around the same time. It's funny, like a lot of the guys who I'm like homies with on Instagram now were also in Brooklyn at the time.
Erickson Aesthetics is nice.
Yeah.
He's got great stuff.
Yeah, I remember I was really impressed. He had a shop that was just a few blocks away. And when I was first working for the bar, he let us use for free just this like giant warehouse space behind a Thai restaurant. And that was kind of crazy. And then once he like kicked us out of that, then I got like a tiny little shop right at the corner of North 6th where the BQE is. And so I was directly above a vintage clothing store. and I was like a vintage clothing collector. So it was kind of fun, except whenever I was like tight on rent or needed lunch money, I'd be taking like suitcases of my, you know, my
You gonna sell
favorite
the clothes back?
Yeah, I'd just be like, I'd taken them down to him and like selling him all my fancy clothes. But so I reached a point of being in New York where it's like, okay, either I need to like really stay here and get connected, or go back to California. And I miss California. I had already like milled up a bunch of Claro walnut in California. It was just sitting in my mom's backyard. You know, I had, I don't know, 50 slabs, maybe more, just like sitting in her backyard drying. And it was when I was in New York that I just got the idea to make a desk in the shape of California. Because I was like, I needed a desk and I was missing California. And I thought like, I just want to be able to touch. I just want to be able to feel like.
That's where that comes from.
Yeah. So I just made it I made the first one out of scrap. Like I made it out of masonite. I had some like leftover plywood, masonite. So I made that first one. I put it on Flickr when, you know, the photo sharing site Flickr was kind of, it had like a social media kind of component, or like you know, it had sort of like a connected element. So a lot of people on Flickr were like, oh, that's awesome. You know, I want one. And I thought, oh, like I should go back to California and dig out all that Claro walnut and make some of these California tables with that Claro. And so that's what I did. I moved back in 2007. And
so how long were you in New York?
Just a year.
Okay.
Yeah, just for a year. So I go back, and even though I had some pretty awesome clients and some pretty awesome commissions, like I was still doing like some of my best work, but it still was not, you know, it still wasn't really enough to be fully paying the bills. And so I was taking, you know, do a kitchen cabinet for a friend. And then I was emailing like all of my clients, just like, hey, anything that I could do with my tools, I will do. Like, I will put together IKEA furniture. I will do closet shelving. Anything that I can do. And
this is when you moved back to California.
Yeah. So I'm back in California. I'm back in San Jose. You know, I had like a pretty nice shop space, but it wasn't crazy expensive. But all of the commercial work was drying up, and these few clients kept me afloat. Like I had one client who just sent me a check. He's like, you know my house, you know what I like, make me something cool. No time limit, no deadline, just here you go. And it was clients like that. And I had another friend who his business is based in China, so his business was actually like going pretty well and needed a bunch of office furniture. So I built his office. So I was kind of saved by a handful of clients, but still, it was looking bleak. So
so let me hold up for a second, right?
Yeah.
So you get back to California and you have to buy all machinery. Did you have stuff there? Did you know people? Craigslist? How'd you fit a shop out?
I moved my whole shop to New York in a truck and a trailer. So I had, you know, my table saw, bandsaw, planer, joiner, a full wood shop, and a bunch of wood. So the first time I was like loading up my truck to go to New York in my trailer, I drive it home I like load it up, okay, I'm ready to go the next day, and there's no suspension. Cause I had like thrown a bunch of slabs in there. I'm like, okay, I got to get rid of this, get rid of that. I had a big garage sale. I sold a bunch of stuff. Like there's a bunch of stuff I still regret selling. Like I had a really nice vacuum press, and I mean, you know, here's another funny story. So, and I posted about this on Instagram like a long time ago, but I had this bending form for a chair seat. Okay, a big heavy MDF bending form for a chair seat, and I'm like, I'm not gonna hold on to this. and my buddy is helping me throw stuff away. I throw it in the dumpster. He's like, dude, you can't throw that away. You spent so long getting the angles and the curves right. You can't throw that away. I'm like, dude, I'm moving to New York. I'm not going to make that chair again. It's a pain in the ass. He fishes the whole thing out of the dumpster, puts it in his truck. He's like, I'm gonna take this home, and I'm gonna hold on to it for when you need it again. I was like, okay, whatever, dude. Like, I'm never gonna need that. So I moved my shop out. When I moved to New York, I bought a new joiner planer combo from Minimax. So it was like an SEMI. So they sent it to me, and then moving back from New York, I moved everything in I think like a 20-foot U-Haul, or maybe like a 26-footer. So
and you drove across country? Yeah,
I drove it back cross country, because the core tools that I had spent so much time like dialing them in, that, you know, and I hadn't paid that much for them. Like, I have a really nice 12-inch table saw. It's like an older Jet from the 80s, but I spent a lot of time like tweaking it. And I wasn't going to sell the new joiner planer. And I had my core tools that I wasn't going to sell. So brought them back. Anyway, about that bending form, fast forward to 2013 when I decided I want to make this rocking chair. And I think, oh, you know what would be perfect for this rocking chair is that seat profile, that slatted seat profile that I'd come up with, you know, years before. So I call up my buddy Skyler. I'm like, dude, I know this is crazy. Okay,
how many years has it been?
Well, it had been 7 years. Wait, is that right? Yeah, it had been 7 years. And wow. He had moved.
Wow.
Okay. Skyler, there's no way you still have that big, heavy MDF bending form. But yeah, it's in the backyard. It's under a tarp. I still have it.
Wow.
I was like, oh, thank you, dude. So I was able to like resurrect that. And that form became like, you know, the basis of my rocking chair seat. So.
Wow.
So anyway.
Do you still have it?
I have an updated version based on it. So I eventually got rid of that old one, but I have, you know, but that contour was the main thing, is that was hard to replicate. So yeah, 2007, I'm just like trying to cut my expenses. So I moved to Oakland, and also like after being in after being in New York, coming back to San Jose, like boring suburban San Jose, even though I had like a lot of friends and family there, I was like a junkie for the energy of New York. You know, it was like coming down off of a high. So I ended up moving to Oakland, got a share.
Let me say,
yeah,
I've been there for 20 years. We've traveled some crazy places all over the world, and it's good to get away, right? And once you get away, you relax. And if you're away too long, you get that angst.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I could have I don't know, for me, being like a woodworker in Brooklyn, taking the subway up to Rosenzweig's in the Bronx, picking out my lumber, waiting 2 days for it to get delivered through, you know, a freight elevator, and $2,000 in parking tickets in a year. And the trailer that I drove to New York in, I was like trying to find somewhere to put it, or maybe even sell it. And I was having to like move the trailer on the street just by hand, you know, just like move this heavy ass trailer. And
onto the side of the street parking.
Then one day it just disappeared. It was just gone. And I was like,
someone did you a favor.
Well, I guess I don't have that trailer anymore. I ended up selling my truck in New York. So I was like, I loved it. And if I was doing any other job, I think I would have stayed in New York. But I was thinking about San Jose, California, all that walnut sitting in my mom's backyard, and it was calling me back, but I still needed some of that urban energy. San Jose wasn't cutting it, so I went to Oakland. Got a shared workspace, just trying to lower my overhead, and the master tenant for that workshop, after about 8 months, he went under, and so there was like a landlord like sniffing around all the time, like trying to get rent. And so me and the other tenants realized like we were paying this guy rent and he wasn't paying the landlord. So we were like, oh man, we need to find a new place to go. So the good thing is that 2009 commercial rents were still really low. Like the only people who were signing new leases were weed growers. So we found this spot in San Francisco, and my buddy was doing a lot of business. He was like going up to San Francisco all the time. He's like, I'll tell you what, if you find me a place where I can just crash when I'm in the city, I'll pay you a rent. I'll pay a portion of rent because I'm spending money on hotel rooms and stuff. And I said, okay, I can figure that out. And I said, will you also be the guarantor on the lease? Because he's like a business guy with like, a really nice tax return. So landlord likes to see that. So he agreed. So we signed a lease on this like beautiful 3,000 square foot space right in the Mission District in San Francisco. At the time we were paying less than $1 a square foot.
Wow.
And we had a 5-year lease. And it was awesome. I built my buddy a little bedroom in the back, and built my own little bedroom and little kitchen, and had my workspace. And
okay, now let me ask you.
Yeah.
What in building that bedroom? How often did you sleep over?
Well, I mean, I lived there. I lived there for the full 6-7 years that I was there. I mean, it was like the savings was just like too good to pass up. And I lived in a tent. I lived in a tent in there for the first year.
You set up a tent in your shop and lived in there.
Yeah, like I kind of blocked off an area, like, made like a makeshift room for my buddy, and he was there maybe like 5 or 6 times a month. I had like just a tent, and then eventually, we built some walls and spent a little bit of money on electrical and kitchen and stuff. But it was
when did you meet your wife?
Well, I didn't have a wife at that time. I don't know if I could have had a wife at that time. I mean,
well, you could have had a girlfriend.
Well, I met Emily while I was in that space, and she did move in, but with her came some changes. So, yeah. So she toughed it out there for a bit, and it was still like very much hand to mouth. Like it was still very much like any job that that came through, I would take. So, building a bunch of workstations for a tech company, or, even repairing something. So
okay, let me ask you, at any point did you decide maybe I'm not charging enough?
I feel like I charged as much as I could, because whatever my like intuitive sense is. Okay, here's an example. So there's jobs where like the executive desk that I was going to build, okay, I happen to know that they were considering desks from Berkeley Mills, like really fancy desks from Berkeley Mills that are $10,000, $11,000. So I knew that I could charge $9,500 and be okay. And even though I still could have made money building that desk for 5,000, right? So there were definitely like much higher profit margin jobs and lower ones. And the more connected I became, the more I could choose and the more I could say no. And the more I could say, well, if this piece is not going to contribute to my collection or my portfolio, I'm just going to charge this crazy amount. And if you take it, a lot of times it's like, this client wanted a bed. I didn't want to build it. I could have built the bed for six grand and made a profit, right? But I was like, but I want a domino, and I don't have a domino yet. So
put it in a price.
So the price I gave was 8,000, and she accepted, and I got the domino. So I think the trick is there's pieces that will make you money right now, but they're not going to help you build the portfolio, or it's like that's one thing that would like hurt me, is like to take on a job that's going to take me a month or 2 months. It's going to wear my tools down. It's going to cost me, overhead. And at the end of the job, all I'm going to have is a paycheck, but I'm not going to have anything that's like building. I'm not going to have a new piece that I can name as a part of my collection.
Okay. So how long did it take you to build your portfolio, and when was enough?
It's never enough. It's like it takes me between like 2 and 4 years to actually get a new design built for me, because I've got a backlog of pieces. Like I have a piece that I sort of conceived when we were on our honeymoon in 2016 that I have the material for, and but that was 4 years ago. I just haven't been able to execute.
Oh, so the portfolio for you is always evolving because you always want to create something new. So that never ever stops.
Well, yeah. Okay. So you take a look at Sam Malouf, and his work evolved over time, right? But basically it was the same stuff, okay? I mean, it's basically all still rooted in kind of that Scandinavian Danish style, but in the 70s, it just got longer and more curvy, But basically, he repeated the same aesthetic for many years. Whereas a maker like Gary Knox Bennett, builds these crazy pieces in the 60s, or like Wendell Castle. It's like he has his 60s pieces, and then his 70s pieces, and then the 80s he's doing stuff with brick and laminate and stainless steel and then glass, and it took me a long time to figure out okay, what am I gonna do? Am I gonna, or somebody like Greg Clausen, where he's found his niche, right? And he is happy. He's every new beautiful piece of wood that he can cut a piece of glass for his river tables is a new, it's continually interesting and new for him. And I think for me, I don't want to get too wacky because I definitely wasted a lot of time. The experience in New York, I don't regret it, but it totally diverted me. So if there's one thing, if I really wanted to focus on branding and building this brand, in 2003, 2004, 2005, when I was just doing chairs, I should have just stuck with chairs, and I should have just been the chair guy, because that was my trajectory. But I was too excited. I was well, I want to put my stamp on. I want to do the J. Rusten version of this and the J. Rusten version of that. But from a branding perspective, it's kind of back to music. So when you have a band that you know, this album is their jazz album, and then this album is their reggae album, and then this album is their country-ish album. It's like, who is this band? Like, it's really hard to, you know, whereas like, I bring up like Radiohead a lot because I think they're a good example of like steady progression that gets a little wacky, but still is basically like rock music, you know? So there was a time where I was like, I'm going to be like the fashion industry, you know? I'm going to have seasonal collections. Here's my fall line, and like haute couture, you know? And it'll be kind of wild out there, but the ideas, you know, just like haute couture, it's like the stuff that comes down the runway is not what sells at Target a year later, but some of the ideas,
right,
like, are distilled into ready to wear. So I thought, well, I can do that with furniture, but the reality is like the turnaround, the timeline's like, you know, there's no way I could like, I personally could like design new pieces and get it all dialed in seasonal. So for me, it's more like, I really like the business model of wood sport or semi goods. So like Tom or Scott McGlasson, I admire them because they have a stable of, let's say, like 20 pieces. Okay. And
both great guys.
Yeah. And those pieces are like, they have enough of ongoing orders for any of those pieces that they're not going to get too sick of building them. It's not like they're going to get, because if I got like an order for 100 California tables, that would be horrible. Like, that would suck. I'd be, you know, I would probably say no, because I don't want to build. But if I get 5 or 6 a year at this point, that's great. You know, I was, for a while, I was doing like 2 a month, and that was, you know, it was good. Like, it paid my rent for, you know, for years, but it was, you know, I think the thing is, in terms of business, is it's all super individual. Okay. And I think a lot of woodworkers, they start out woodworking because of the joinery. Okay. And because of the wood. But then there's a lot of woodworkers that get excited about the business end. Okay. You know, they start listening to, you know, audiobooks about business, and the business becomes the challenge. Okay. How do I, you know, do I buy a wide belt, or do I just pay this helper more to sand? Do I outsource my customer service? Do I do this? You know, there's companies like Uhuru, and I think there's probably a bunch of other companies now where it's like they sell delivery insurance. Okay. They're making a lot of money selling delivery insurance. They're an insurance company now, right? So rather than like, oh, sorry, your table's messed up, send it back, we'll fix it, whatever. It's like, hey, it's like a rental car company. You buy the delivery insurance for this extra premium, and we'll just send you a new table next day or whatever, you know? So there's a lot of woodworkers that are interested in scaling. And if you want to make a lot of money, and if you want to buy boats, and if you want to be able to like sell your company to a larger company, yeah, you got to scale. But personally, you know, 5 years ago, when I was like, okay, I've tried these different things. I want to hone in on like what I want to do every day.
All right. Can I want to interrupt 1 second?
Yeah.
All right. We're in hour 2. We got 28 minutes.
Okay.
Now, can we get a shop? We need to break this last 30 minutes up.
Okay.
Can we get a shop tour?
Sure.
All right. So let's do a shop tour, and then we come back for a shop tour. Then we get into we close with the nitty gritty.
Okay. So let's see. I'm going to go from the front of the building.
Okay.
Okay, so this is like the main street in downtown Stockton, and this is the building. So built in 1918, and it was
So
like
you got that whole building?
yeah.
Wow.
So and we have this vacant lot. Actually, it was like a printing. I mean, it started as like a tractor showroom, and then it became a like a printing shop. So, I mean, when we bought this building, it was just like boarded up, you know, like bars in the windows. It was just vagrants had been squatting in here. There was no electrical because they'd taken all the copper. So we still have a lot of work left to do. Like we took this last ceiling down. We still need to like pull these little joists off and paint the ceiling. But
Do you own or rent?
we own it. So, and that was like a huge part of this kind of business decision because it was.
What's up, Greg Classen?
It was about lowering our overhead to be able to have more freedom because, you know, the rent in San Francisco was good for 5 years, but then at the end of that lease, the landlord doubled the rent. And then the year after he wanted to like go to 7,500 and we were just like, no, that's not going to happen. So we've got like this wall that I'm still like working on. Here's a California table. It's just like a big, fat, thick piece of Claro. So I don't usually build them out of solid, and I don't usually do them that thick. But this client requested that. So this is just kind of like this would be kind of like the showroom area.
How long have you been there?
5 years. We bought it in August of 2015.
How many square feet is it?
It's 5,000.
That's big. And what about the lot next door?
It's just vacant, and Emily is doing a bunch of landscaping on it right now and just trying to make it like an outdoor chill zone. And
okay.
So we still have a lot of work there. But so this area right here, this like kind of kitchen area, I'm gonna build some bifold steel and glass doors that kind of like match this style, so that this whole kind of kitchen zone can be enclosed. So this is the kitchen area. And then this is like an old joiner that's basically our like kind of kitchen table, kitchen island that I got from an old foundry in Stockton that was going out of business. So I just recently finished up these like glass and steel doors or windows. This is just like, you know, kind of a collection of machines that need to be restored and templates. So I have like a nice Davis and Wells bandsaw I need to restore and a few other pieces. This is that's the bending jig now for the rocking chair slats. This is just like storage that still needs to be like better organized. So just kind of hand tool zone, old workbench, just collection of junk, little music zone. And this is just
is it just you?
It's just me. I've had a couple helpers here and there, but yeah, it's just me. So we actually like had our wedding in here, and we put up these these paper lanterns for our wedding, but we've just left them because they work
pretty nice.
But when we bought the building, we put these skylights in, those two, and then the clear story windows, you know, were already there. I just put some polycarbonate over them on the outside. So yeah, just have like a little metal zone. This is the conference table I'm going to deliver next week. So this was an old planer base that I salvaged also from that same foundry. And you know, this is for like a local company, so it made sense to just use like a historical piece. But there's a lot of custom work like this that I don't put on Instagram if it's not something that if it's not something that I want to repeat, I usually don't bother posting it. Because I don't, I don't want clients like asking for something that I'm,
Yeah, I was talking about that with Matt Cremona and Benevolent Design. When people see you do something, they want to see you do it more.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, using like a vintage cast iron base is cool, but that's not really part of my brand. So I'm not going to publicize it. But anyway, so that's basically it. There's still like a ton of work that needs to be done. My clamps are still sitting in a pile. I still need to build a clamp rack, and it's still kind of cluttered here and there. But we want to clean up, create like a loft zone up there. And
I was about to say that looks like a nice bedroom to me.
Well, it may be not officially, but
of course,
but there might be some plans in the works.
We won't talk about that here.
Yeah. So, but mainly I'm just like excited about getting this. So I really want to paint this floor, or at least like have like a really good temporary floor system so we can use this for just like photo shoots. Because one like super vital important thing is having like a dedicated place to take photos that just is like turnkey, where you don't have to like spend a ton of time like messing with lighting. You just know
that stage.
Yeah, you just know that it's good. Like, for example, I remember seeing semi-goods photos in Dwell magazine back in the early 2000s, and the photos were always on this kind of gravel against this like outdoor wall. All the photos, and you'd see that wall, you'd see that gravel, and it was like really good for creating brand recognition. So anyway, was that enough of a tour? Was that okay?
Yeah. It's a pretty amazing shot, man. Congratulations on that building. That's a big move.
Well, I credit Scott from Woodsport, because he and I have emails going back. How do you like this trade show? How do you like this? How's this working for you? How's this working? And he's been generous with his knowledge and his experience. And this was 7-8 years ago, and I'm in San Francisco. Things are good, but also very scary, because the tech boom's happening. People are getting displaced. Artists moving out of San Francisco. We know our time's limited, and I didn't want to just like move to another expensive short-term lease in like Oakland or San Leandro, get bumped out of that, and at the time, like, Scott was getting into a new shop where he was paying like ridiculously low rent for like a beautiful space. And I was like, that's it. Like, that's the key for me, at least, is just like low overhead. I mean, my rent in San Francisco was $6,500. That last year we were paying $6,500. And the only way we made it work was like, Emily was hustling, renting out our space for like photo shoots. We were, we were like renting it out a bunch, taking any job. And it was like, okay, I don't want to move my shop like really ever again. Like, it maybe once more in my life, but that's it. That's all I got. Okay. So we need to set this stuff down, and we have to own something, because I can't deal with the insecurity of having a landlord saying, you got to go. And we looked around, like a 2-hour radius from San Francisco. So we're talking like Petaluma, down to Gilroy, Vallejo, Martinez, all these little communities. And definitely like the cheapest was Stockton. And also like we're just like amazed that the downtown had all these like warehouse buildings that like nobody had done anything with for years. And so we bought this building and the lot for $210,000.
Wow.
Yeah. And the owner he gave us an interest only loan for the first 3 years.
That's even better. It's a good guy, good girl.
Well, no, he isn't a good guy, but he was savvy enough that like there weren't that many other people knocking on his door. And
Got it.
so it worked for him. And we, you know, the first thing we had to do, $30,000 for a new roof. We had to take out a bunch of other loans, you know, like construction loans, loans from family, loans from friends. I had like these amazing clients who are now good friends, and they knew the position we were in, and they just wrote a check for 30 grand. And they said, we're going to be moving into this house, this new house, in a couple of years. It's being built. We know we're going to need furniture at that time, but we know you need this cash now. So take this 30 grand and you build the furniture when we need it.
Wow.
And it was like, you know, clients like that helped us get in here. And it was, you know, those first like 3 years, we basically were paying the same amount that we had been in San Francisco, because we're paying off loans, we're paying for materials, we're paying contractors. But a year ago, we like got all of our refinancing done. And so we basically got our mortgage to like $500. So,
wow.
So our, like, compared to what we were paying in San Francisco, our overhead is so low that in like a conference table like that, instead of having to get one or two of those out the door every month, I can, you know, I can work on that conference table and make some guitars and work on new designs and work on the building and finally get to all the stuff that I've put off for so long. But I'll say that to get to where I am now, it required
all of that.
Those first 15 years of building up clientele, of like, you know, getting images out onto like Pinterest, so that, because the way people find me is so random. Like I built 2, you know, expensive chairs for a client in Austin, really wealthy client. And I said, how'd you find me? He said, I just Googled chairs with low seats. And sure enough, if you scroll down like 3 pages on like Google image search, there's a little thumbnail of my chair. And it was just off that little thumbnail that he was compelled to contact me. So it, you know, so could like a younger woodworker, you know, move to Stockton and be able to count on like enough business to sustain them? I can't say. You know, it's a mix of all of that legwork, like leading up to, and San Francisco, like, you know, meeting, like I had an apprentice, and who's also like become a good friend, who knew somebody at Sunset Magazine and recommended me. I got like a full page feature in Sunset Magazine that would have cost me like $30,000, you know, if I had purchased that advertising. And that helped kick off the California series. So from that feature and other features, that's some of the luck that I was talking about. But, you know, that helped get stuff out there into the world. And so I'm sorry for going off for so long, but
no, that's what this is about. It's about your journey.
The thing is, like, it's so individual too. Like, I'm sure that the example that I use a lot is I worked with a woodworker. He studied in Japan. Amazing, like, amazing craftsman. Like, one of the best I've ever known. Crazy collection of Japanese hand tools. And he would do a lot of, like, liturgical things for churches, okay? They'd pay him a ton of money to do big, you know, the big pulpits and all the other stuff. And almost all the work was like veneered, like curved veneered work, you know, with like plywood MDF core. And when he would be like flushing something out, he wouldn't be taking like a belt sander. He'd be taking out his little like Japanese hand plane, you know, and I'd be like, dude, that's a 30-second job with a belt sander. Okay. But you're spending time to sharpen this Japanese plane, blade, and you're very carefully, fussily doing this thing for the pleasure of it. Okay. He's not worried about the economy of it. He's like, I didn't get into woodworking to use a belt sander.
He's getting in that zone you talked about.
Exactly. And so that's what's so individual, is that somebody else may be like, no, I want to produce a volume of work. I want to get it out the door, and I'm okay with the quality dropping a bit by adding new helpers. I want to build this brand, I don't want to build, it's not about these individual pieces. But for me, okay, the thing I learned from New York was I actually don't want to make public space, because I worked on that bar and I worked on a couple other bars and restaurants
right.
and public spaces that people just destroyed. Okay. And I did work for, like you do work for a big corporation and nobody owns it. Like the corporation owns it. Okay. So when they move locations, maybe it ends up in storage, like there's no one person that like cherishes that piece. And for me, for whatever reason, it's like, it's important. Like I would rather, don't get me wrong, I'll take the corporate money and I'll build the corporate thing. But like in terms of, at the end of the day, satisfaction.
Yeah, your preference.
Building a thing for a family. And I know that chair or that dining table, and I try to make it so good that even if, the grandchildren, 50 years from now, they're like, this thing's ugly. Like it's not my style.
Okay. So let me get a little trivia, I guess.
Okay.
Let's say, for example, there's a nice family you met that can't afford to pay the prices you want to pay, the prices you want for your stuff. Mm-hmm. What happens then?
Well, it depends.
And you know it's someone who will enjoy.
Well, so it's all about like latitude. If it's something that I want to build, I'll build it at cost. And a lot of my early pieces, like some of those early pieces that I like the cantilever desk that I made, I built that at cost. And in fact, what I did was I had like 6 collection pieces that I wanted to build, but I didn't have $5,000 to spend on 8-quarter walnut, right? So I had like kind of like an online network of people, and I said, here's the prices, here's the pieces that I want to make. I'll build it at cost. The catch is you might have to wait 8 months or a year, and I might take that piece to a couple trade shows first.
Before you get it, right.
And that's how I funded those first pieces. So it was like, to answer your question, I've built pieces for like teachers that were on a really humble income, right? But I worked out a payment plan with them, and they paid me over, years, and they got the pieces, or I definitely have like a friend family kind of like discount, but it has to be something that is going to contribute to my body of work.
Right. Okay. Now we have 9 minutes.
Okay.
Okay. Do you want to open for questions, or you want to continue to talk?
Sure. Whatever.
So if anyone got any questions, shoot. Go ahead.
I can just keep talking until somebody's got a good question.
Yeah.
But it's just to refer to that thing again, like it's all individual. And the thing is, like, I know different woodworkers who've had this advantage or this hookup or this thing or a trust fund, where like, it's like the joke, how do you make $1 million making furniture? Start with 2 million, like, and I know guys like that. And it's really impossible to compare yourself, your journey, your path, because, I'm going to make choices that will cost me money, I will
Right.
I will spend more time than somebody else on a piece because I want it to be a certain way, or um, or because I don't want to use the belt sander, you know.
Right.
And
Okay.
so yeah.
Philip Morning Furniture. I came in late, so you may have already asked this. Do you have any formal training? And if so, he has a lot of formal training. It was about an hour and a half. So you're gonna have to watch this again, man. He had a lot of training.
Well, Phil, to answer Phil's question, I had an experience similar to his because I know he refers to his mentor quite frequently. I don't think I had quite as many years, which I would have definitely benefited from if I had stuck with William Stranger. But I took 2 semesters of classes at Cerritos. Okay, 2 semesters, and one of them was a hand tools class. It was like absolutely indispensable in terms of me understanding what sharpness is and how to take, you know, a $40 hand plane, you know, like a $40, $50 Stanley hand plane, and making it work maybe not as good as like you know, Lie Nielsen, but like to work pretty darn good for a $40 plane with a lot of tuning up. So the formal training was, you know, those 2 semesters of classes and then apprenticing with master craftsmen for a couple of years.
Right. Fashion said, your last day working with wood, you are old. What does it look like?
Wait, what about being old? I know I'm old, but.
No, it said, it's a hypothetical. Your last day working with wood, you're old. What does it look like?
Oh, okay. Oh boy. Oiling up some Claro walnut. Like it would be.
Now, do you make your own oil or you use?
I messed with that for a long time. I messed with like making my own, you know, sort of Danish oil and experimenting with like a bunch of stuff. But the drying time was the thing that I could never tolerate. You know, if you want low VOCs, you got to wait 2 weeks. And like, I can't be, I couldn't deal with, you know, waiting 2 weeks in between coats or having like a low VOC finish that the client touches and they still get a handprint because the oil is still coming out. So I use Pullman Magic, which is very similar to Rubio Monocoat. It's a floor finish. It's a German finish that was designed for floors, and it's not 0 VOCs, but it's like almost 0.
What's the name of it again?
Pullman Magic. So it's PALLMANN Magic 2K hard oil. And it's a 2-part. It dries super hard and it dries in 12 hours and it like penetrates. So the trick is I sand to 320. I water pop it to open up the grain, because if you don't water pop it, like the grain, the finish is not going to penetrate. Okay. So I water pop it. It's dry in 12 hours. You can like sand it after, 12, 24 hours to a nice chalky finish. Sand that tooth out. Then I put like 3 or 4 more coats on, and that's for like tables. If with chairs, I might use like Livos or another like Danish oil finish that I'm not as worried about, like, abrasion resistance. But it's like, the way I measure it is like the rags. Okay. When you buff off a Pullman Magic, that rag is like crunchy. It's like hard and crunchy, and not like epoxy. I mean, there still is some flexibility to it, but it's a really tough finish, more than you just like a linseed mixed with varnish, kind of thing.
Right. So do you have a book coming out?
No, you got a publisher? You got a publisher for me?
And this is Bruce Ayers' second time asking this. When does your book come out?
Oh.
Maybe you should write a book.
It'll be a how not to. It'll be it'll be don't do this. Don't do this. But if you can't not do it, well, at least don't do these things.
Right. Okay. Question, and I need to ask this more often. the purpose of me doing this is for this to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately what I would want is it to become a community page where different people can have a conversation with people they admire. Not only me, just other people. With that being said, who would you like to have a conversation with?
I mean, I've heard his story a bunch, but he's always entertaining, and he's one of my kind of furniture heroes. But Tyler Hayes of BDDW is...
I asked him.
Yeah. I mean, he's like, he has a good... there's a podcast called Clever, where he talks to Jamie, and I think Amy is the other co-host, and that's a pretty good hour. But like, I was in a trade show with him in 2013. Our booths were across from each other, and I hit him up. I mean, I tried not to bug him too much, but I should have been in my booth selling furniture more than trying to like learn all I could from him. But
he's genius.
Yeah, he's fascinating. There's Reed I'm butchering his last name, but I think his primary business now is Herald Design. So he's got a bunch of really interesting designs, and he's based in New York. And he's somebody who, when I was like working on my rocking chair, I was like looking out there, like who else has like a really interesting, original, inventive rocking chair design? And he's got two. And so he's another one. And then Harold Green, who was on that, you know.
Yeah, I'm gonna hit him up too.
I mean, he's been around the block, you know, for decades, and he,
all right,
you know.
We got 30 seconds.
Okay. Well, Robert, thank you so much for the interest and attention and great questions. I appreciate it.
Brother, thank you. I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much. You do amazing work.
I'll hit you up in New York. See you in New York.
Please come by. And just to let you know, my overhead is $30,000 a month. It ain't the way to go.
Hey, sell those slabs. Get those slabs going.
Right. All right, brother. Have a good one.
See ya.